Hello, hello. If you are watching this, I first want to thank you for being an In Plain View podcast listener. The date is July 28th. It's roughly noon Eastern Standard Time. And lo and behold, Draftkings has finally released the salaries for NFL Week 1 for the 2019 season. This is always a very exciting time for me. I'm always itching to get these when it's, late July, early August. And it's finally here. So I do want up front, I just want to make you aware that I still have plenty to look through and evaluate for the NFL season. But I just very preliminarily wanted to go through these salaries and share any insight. But again, it's preliminary. It's subject to change. I would always recommend that before you really dig through the numbers and do your analyses, that you just take a look at the prices right up front. If someone sticks out, if it's a good price, bad price, or if it's a good opponent, you see an efficiency in the pricing perhaps, and you like that player, you're going to want to track that. You're going to want to log it and consider it while you're still evaluating. I am no pro at DFS, but I do have a couple decent cash payouts under my belt. I do really like large-scale GPPs. I can typically break even throughout the season, which is relatively decent when you're looking at expected value. So I'd like to think I'm above average. And because of that, because you are a podcast listener, I just want to share my advice. But I'm never going to sit here and tout like everyone on Twitter, everyone on social media trying to make a buck. It's hard. It's very hard. And when you're doing large-scale GPPs, the probability of hitting, there's a lot of luck involved. The math pans out. There's a lot of luck involved. But you can shift luck in your favor by doing certain things. So I just want to spend a couple minutes here. The prices are finally here. I'm totally stoked. Let's run through them. So I'm just going to take a look at these quarterbacks. And if anything stands out to me, I will discuss it. So we have Patty Mahomes and Andrew Luck. Those are the top two most expensive quarterbacks. 7,200. It's Patty Mahomes. On one end, you could say it's a good tournament play because he is so expensive. But at the same time, Vegas does have this game over 50 points already. That's probably not going to change. So this game will be, as if it wasn't already the Kansas City Chiefs, this game will be on players' radars. But given how expensive it is, the ownership might be low enough to where you can have an advantage against the field. Andrew Luck, the Chargers, they're going to be stingy this year. And if I wanted to be a total degenerate, I would tell you that Indy might be going to the Super Bowl this year. They seem to be very, very good, and this is going to be an exciting season. They're doing great things over there, that organization. But Week 1, LA Chargers, with this kind of salary, I'm probably going to fade it. Maybe I'll have minimal exposure if I'm doing 150 lineups. Maybe a couple, but I'm not a huge fan of that. I have a couple of analyses from the past where I would evaluate perfect lineups. So if you've ever heard of Fantasy Cruncher, we're not affiliated with them whatsoever, but I do recommend the site. They have a free feature that's called Lineup Rewind. And what you can do is you can go on there and you can historically look at different weeks and you can generate up to 500 of the most perfect lineups using the actual score. So using the actual outcome of that week. And I would study that quite a bit. And something that I noticed is, a prime price range for quarterbacks tends to be right around 6,000. If you're around 6,000, give or take, there's going to be people in this subsegment where they're going to perform and they're going to hit 4 times value, 5 times value, pretty consistently on a weekly basis. So that's a little tidbit I'd like to just let you or make you aware of. But let's see. So we went through Mahomes, we went through Luck. Jameis Winston at 6,600. So I would say that this is slightly expensive for Jameis Winston, but I understand why. I really like this game for week 1. First of all, as far as the main slate is concerned, it's got a 49-point over-under, which is the second or third highest. So I think regarding the main slate, of course, there's some pretty high-profile games that aren't going to be in the Millie Maker, the main slate. So what I would say is San Fran versus Tampa Bay, it might not have a lot of ownership in this game when you look at some of the other games, like Kansas City, Jacksonville, Atlanta, Minnesota, the Rams, the Panthers, what have you. And something else that I want to say is, and this is pertaining to an article that I had just released a few days ago, is how important heavy game stacks are in the first few weeks of the season. And, my hypothesis would be that it's still very volatile time. There are teams still trying to figure out other teams. So you're going to get these weird games where you have Fitzpatrick with Tampa Bay and they're just tearing it up. And, man, if you did a heavy game stack with Tampa Bay and, was it the Saints? I think it was the Saints. But in week 1, anyways, if you did a heavy game stack in that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, you were golden. And I've seen this trend within the first couple weeks of the season. You do a game stack of like a quarterback, a running back, and 3 pass catchers. It can be any combinations. As long as there's at least one player from each team. If you just have a rule like that and you're going to put it in your lineup generator, that seems to be very beneficial. After week 3, things are going to start to normalize. But you're going to see more points scored. You're going to see higher standard deviations at the beginning of the season. And that makes sense. Everyone's still trying to figure everything out. And I think this is going to be a good game because the ownership might be lower. I think there's a good point of leverage in San Fran. People might be scared to start Jimmy Garoppolo. He hasn't done much in some time. And I think that might be a good opportunity. You kind of want to exploit the unknown with GPPs because that's a good leverage point. And you have other lineups. If you're doing 150 lineups, you got to diversify. You got to kind of go out there. You need high variance lineups. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo could be a great one. Tampa Bay, whether it's Fitzpatrick or Jameis Winston, they've been very pass heavy. They really crush it with those metrics, air yards, everything like that. So I'd really like this is a game stack here. Tampa Bay just had their big defensive deal recently, but they're still probably going to be the worst defense in the league. That could change, but that's going to be my guess. That in itself leads me to believe that this really could be a great shootout. So Jameis Winston and Jimmy Garoppolo, I would highly recommend either of them with a heavy game stack. If you're doing Garoppolo, you want Kittle, you want another receiver. You could even do Tevin Coleman. You could stack them all, perhaps. The fact that they're also cheap is also very advantageous. You can get a couple studs for running backs and in your flex. Christian McCaffrey, something like that. And, so we got Winston, Garoppolo. I really like those two. Let me just take a look here. Matt Ryan, that's not a bad one. Lamar Jackson at 6,000. No, thank you. No, thanks. Phillip Rivers, no. I'm not a fan. Yeah, see, Jimmy Garoppolo is sitting right at 5,800. That's like the perfect price point that I really like. The opponent ranking is 29th for Tampa Bay. It just seems like it's going to be set up to be a really high production game. The last quarterback I want to talk about here is my boy Josh Allen. I don't know why all you people are sleeping on Josh Allen, but this kid's going to be good. You can sit there and you can look at his college stats. You can look at his first season with the Bills, given that quarterback fiasco, given that offensive line fiasco, given the fact that they couldn't produce, period, on offense. The fact that he did and accomplished what he did last season, given the tools around him, just shows how great he is. And I don't care what anyone says. He is extremely talented, And if I had to give a hot take for the season, I'm going to say Josh Allen will score 2 bonuses in one game. So let's see. He's going to rush for 100 yards, which is going to add 3 points to his total. And then he's going to throw for 300. I think it's 300, which would be 3 points, another 3 points. I don't know if anyone's done it before, but he's going to be the one to do it. I really like Josh Allen. The fact that he's running, he's probably not going to run like he did last year, but the kid can ball. And he's going to get you plenty of points on the ground. If you have any inkling to start Lamar Jackson, just pick up Josh Allen. He's a better Lamar Jackson for everything that you like in Lamar Jackson. And he's cheaper. He's $5,600. Josh Allen, because of his running ability, it's similar to a Cam Newton, where you don't need to stack him. You could do a naked Josh Allen. He's the only Bills player, or he's the only player in that game. Just throw Josh Allen in. He's $5,600 to hit 4 or 5 times value. I mean, he did it plenty of times last year. And look at the last game against the Dolphins last year, man. They really flourished. So I'll tell you what. Again, this is preliminary, but I'm going to be doing heavy game stacks with San Fran, Tampa Bay on both sides. Different permutations, just given maybe a quarterback, running back, and 3 pass catcher rule. Given that it is week 1 and there's going to be a lot of variance, and we want to exploit it. It's synergistic when you have a heavy team stack, and it's the total shootout. Heavy game stack. But I mean that really can set you apart if it all clicks and you have the right combination of players. Okay. That is it for running back. Let's see. We have Zeke at 9,200. No, thank you. I think there's better players that are cheaper. It's a little give and take. I'm always looking for 4 or 5 times value from a player. But you need to lower your expectations a little bit when you get into the players that are 9,200. Okay? He's probably not going to score 40 or 50 points. But there are still better options, in my opinion. I would rather do Barkley over Elliott. I would rather do McCaffrey over both of them, and he's 8,800. I do like McCaffrey here. Todd Gurley, he's got that arthritis issue. I'm going to have to look more into that. Not a huge fan at 7,900. David Johnson, I do like this play. I think he's going to have a great season. He didn't do much last year, but I don't know if that was his fault. And I think it's going to be a bounce-back year for him. Melvin Gordon, I think there's some... Well, let's see. It says he's out. Yeah, he's doing a holdout right now. Not a huge fan of that. 7,500, no. Le'Veon Bell, that's not a bad option. I would consider him as an elite running back to put into my lineup. So we got McCaffrey, we got Johnson, we got Bell. Joe Mixon, I wish he was a little bit more of a pass catcher. Christian McCaffrey was playing against Seattle when he scored 52 points last year, which is crazy. So yeah, I'll have some exposure to Mixon. I'll have some exposure to Chubb. Fournette, maybe. Yeah, it's not bad. Dalvin Cook at 6. That's not a bad option. I like Dalvin Cook. Marlon Mack against the Chargers. That could be a good one, too. Eckler at 55. That's not bad. Not a huge fan of Ingram here in this particular situation. I do like Tevin Coleman, as I discussed with the San Fran and Tampa Bay stack. And then I just want to go through. I'm not going to go through every single one here, but we have LaShawn McCoy at 4,600. Everyone's given up on McCoy, but that offensive line was total trash. And he's very focused. He's a smart player. He's had his injuries, but he doesn't get injured very often. He doesn't have very serious injuries. So Buffalo revamped their offensive line. McCoy could turn up. At 4,600, this could be potentially a huge play. I like that one a lot. What else do we got? Frank Gore at 3,800. We don't know how the splits are going to be yet. Devin Singletary, he could be good. Yeah. All right, let's move to wide receiver. Odell Beckham Jr. at 8,100. Not a huge fan. Another trend that I've noticed with lineups is, you can have an expensive wide receiver, 7,900 or what have you. I really only like doing that in game stacks. And obviously I don't mean this as a hard rule, but I generally like spending down a little on wide receiver so I can spend up on running backs. If I can get a running back like Christian McCaffrey, he could have 10 receptions and X amount of yards and X amount of touchdowns and just have a huge game, I'd much rather have that. With wide receiver, you can always find some people under 5K that are going to return 4 to 5 times their value. It's a little harder to do that at the running back spot. So I'll just keep it at that. Mike Evans, I do like him at 7,900 because this is a game stack that I'm paying attention to. Adam Thielen, him and Diggs are always good plays. Godwin, 6,200. I do like that. I have my eyes on them. Cooper Kupp, not sure how he's going to be after the injury. I might stay away from that. Kind of maybe see how he performs over a couple of weeks before. Fitzgerald at 4,900. That might not be a bad option if Arizona really turns it up. I think given how last season went, people aren't going to be too excited to play them despite the new quarterback. But he might have a really good game. It's in the realm of the possible. So I like Fitzgerald. DK Metcalf at 4,000. I really don't know what's going to become of DK Metcalf. We got Marquise Goodwin, 4,000. Always like him. He is lightning fast. If there's a cheap player that can catch a bomb or two and hit a good value, it's Goodwin. He's the poor man's Tyreek Hill. Cole Beasley at 3,600. Man, I like that a lot. Opponent rank 32nd in the league, the Jets. Depending on how things turn out, Zay Jones or Cole Beasley, but Beasley definitely 3,600. Really like Beasley there. I think we're going to call it on wide receivers. Let's go to tight end. Kelsey, well, I'll put it this way. If Kittle is healthy, I would take Kittle over Kelsey all day. I think Kittle is going to tear it up. He's going to tear it up against Tampa Bay. He is a yards monster, and yards is what converts to the majority of the points that a player can score most of the time. And it's also indicative of whether or not a player is going to get their bonus. And that is important. It's important if you can get a player that's going to hit the bonus. When you're doing large scale GPPs, having players like that really helps. It helps set you apart. So you do a couple game stacks, you find one where 4 or 5 players hit their bonus, which does happen, especially at the start of the season, and you're cooking with oil. So I would take Kittle here. OJ Howard, that's not a bad play. Njoku, that's not a bad play. I would keep my tight end core rather tight. Just a couple of players, maybe Cam Brate, depending on how the depth chart turns out, who's getting what. But if they're splitting snaps, which I'm pretty sure they did last year, that could be a good one there. Yeah, we'll call that. And then defense, let's just take a look. Baltimore at Miami. Here's what I'll say. Ravens is obviously, they're a great defense. With Miami, I don't know if they're starting Rosen. I don't know if they're starting Fitzpatrick. Either way, Baltimore's defense is crazy. So it's very possible that you get 15, 20 points out of the Ravens defense. But it's also nearly 4,000. And given that it's week 1 and it's going to be a lot of variance and there's going to be some crazy games and crazy plays, I think you could get the same performance out of some of the most expensive teams, the most expensive defenses this week with some of the cheaper tiers. If you do some analysis prior to week 1, you'll find that there's a lot of variance with defense. Honestly, if you're using an optimizer, I almost just set defense to random. I think that's kind of maybe the best approach. But let's see, for week 1 here, Ravens, I'll have a couple. I'll do a lower ownership. I won't put them in all my lineups, but I'll have a couple. Cowboys, that also might not be a bad one. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Barkley, but the Giants are having serious wide receiver issues at this point in time. So contingent on whether or not things change, I do like the Cowboys defense here. Browns defense I like, but a little too expensive for me. Jets, no. Bills, no. Wouldn't want the Chiefs. Titans, Colts. I'm not a huge fan of these. Honestly, I think my favorite pick here would be the Dolphins defense against Baltimore. Yeah, it's one of the cheaper options. I can tell you that it is not uncommon in the first couple of weeks where some of these, like top 5 of the cheapest defenses, one of them does turn up. That is definitely possible, and it's a good way to save salary for the rest of your players. I would be doing a lot of Dolphins defense. Again, preliminary, and again, I need to do my homework still for this season. I haven't done much. You're probably going to find some inaccuracies and things that I've already said. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I do like the Dolphins defense here. It's 2,100. Baltimore, they're very defense oriented. As far as their offense, I don't know if Lamar Jackson is going to cut it. This is probably going to be a gritty, low scoring game, but I could see the Dolphins having a good turnout. And if you get 15 points with nearly 2,000 less spent on the defense, that's more leverage to your lineup. You have that added salary to get better players in different spots and get a higher score, and that will drive you to the top of the rankings. So this is my preliminary look here at some of the players and some of the prices. Something that I'm going to do for the listeners is I'm going to export each week, probably just the main slate to CSV, and then I will add some formulas and some metrics that I usually look at to the CSV, and then we can distribute it to the listeners. So, I'm looking forward to doing that. If anyone has any questions, just go to our site in plainviewcast.com, and we will go ahead and get a hold of you. Other than that, thanks for listening. Please tune in again.